Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to another show of our beautiful UAP Studies podcast.
Beautiful.
Today we are going to delve into the world of like higher consciousness. We're going to talk to a lady who practices quantum healing hypnosis. So basically, how to access your third eye, but not having to be like a meditation genius to get there. There's a hypnotic way that you can be put into that state and you can heal yourself. You can learn about past lives and all kinds of crazy stuff. We asked her about remote viewing and astral projection and ESP, and even talked about,
Abductions.
yeah, exactly, Atlantis and Lemuria. So it's really interesting. And I hope you guys are going to like this show. I know we're pumped up. Let's do this. Welcome back to another great episode of UAP Studies Podcast. I am Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my good friend and co-host, Jason Gilmet.
How's it going?
It's going really good. It's exciting today. We're switching it up a little bit. We're not going to be nuts and bolts UFO per se, but more on like a quantum level, ways of accessing sort of your third eye, cool places in the world, ancient civilizations. We're really going to dig deep into some areas we don't go very often because we do have a lot of followers and viewers that like that as well. Again, we're UAP Studies. So this is the university for people who are into this stuff. And again, in keeping with our usual list of high caliber guests, we have an award-winning author today. She is a practitioner of QHHT, which is quantum healing hypnosis technique, a method developed by Loris Cannon some 45 years ago. She knows a lot about ancient civilizations. She just booked a tour of Egypt that sold out right away. So we're super excited to have on the show today, Sarah Breskman Cosme. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself for our viewers who may not know who you are, kind of what got you into this, and how did that lead up to what you're working on today?
Well, I'm the author of A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis and A Hypnotist's Journey to the Secrets of the Sphinx. And I got into all of this stuff by accident. I basically just started out just trying to self because I had so many problems. And over the years, I learned hypnosis, and gradually I got into Dolores Cannon's method. But I got into all this material by accident. In fact, I don't research other people's stuff. All the information that I get comes from my own clients. And I do this job basically almost every day where I do Dolores Cannon's method, which is bringing people to the deepest level of trance and then accessing their subconscious. And then in that way, they can find out everything they want to know about themselves and even other lifetimes they've lived, and they can even heal their body. But I got into this material by accident because I needed a client to regress, or someone to regress, to take this video submission to one of the classes I was taking. And I decided to ask my friend Jen, who had been my friend for about 10 years. And when I asked her, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, why did I ask this person? Because she was one of those friends who wasn't into any of this stuff. And I instantly regretted it. And I thought, oh no, what is she going to say? I just asked her if she would be my subject for this thing where I'm going to regress her and find out about another lifetime she lived. And I told her, if you are my willing participant, you can even find out if you have any issues, you can heal yourself. And then she looked at me really, really funny. And I thought, oh, she's going to think I'm totally crazy. I knew it, because we were friends for like 10 years and I would try to bring up spiritual stuff, but she would just shoot it down. So she was just one of those people I never talked to about that stuff. But she looked at me and she said, are you serious? I have been looking for something like this. And I was like, what do you mean? All this time I've been like trying to tell you, different things about different sessions, and you think it's crazy. And she said she had been looking for something like this because She didn't tell anyone, but she was suffering from this brain condition called pseudotumor cerebri. And basically, it was this really serious swelling that was affecting her brain. And she worked really closely with this team of specialists at the University of Miami. And they said, there's no cure for this, but we can put you on this heavy duty medication. So she was just completely devastated. She was only 32 at the time. She said, yes, I will be willing subject. Definitely. You can do whatever you want with me. You can regress me, take this video submission to your class. So we started out, and at first, I wasn't sure what to expect with her because she wasn't sure if she believed in having other lifetimes, which is fine. I've had clients that don't believe in other lifetimes. That's fine. It doesn't really matter what you believe, but I didn't know how she would feel if she saw another lifetime. Well, sure enough, as soon as she goes deep under hypnosis, she recounts this other lifetime in this place called Lemuria. Now, she was not into any of this stuff. She didn't know about Atlantis, Lemuria, extraterrestrials. In fact, when I was talking to her beforehand, she told me she didn't believe in extraterrestrials. So here she's recounting memories of these places. And after that session, I asked her subconscious, why why does she have this tumor? And they said the reason behind the tumor was to get her to see me, because this information that she's stored deep within her subconscious has been buried for thousands and thousands of years. And this information is so important for people to understand because the world needs it now. Said you too uncover this information, share it, that there's nothing that we would need to do. They would help us share it. So after this first session, she goes back to her team of specialists because she feels better. She doesn't know what's going on in her mind. She notices that she doesn't notice the same pain that she was experiencing before. So as soon as she goes back, she is completely healed. And they said, we don't understand. I hope my internet's still working. We don't understand how that's possible. This must be a miracle. We've never seen anything like this before. And so here what her name is Jen. Here Jen was just completely shocked by all of this. And she said, okay, Sarah, let's do it again. Let's find out all this information that we're supposed to find and share this with the world. So I thought that she would start from the beginning of that lifetime in Lemuria, where she was part of the ruling family in that lifetime. And I thought she would start from the beginning. I told her subconscious, take us to the beginning of the story that you want us to uncover to share with the world. And they didn't take us to the beginning of that lifetime. Instead, they took us to the beginning, another lifetime that Jen had when she was an extraterrestrial commander crash landing on Earth for the very first time. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is she going to think? She doesn't believe in aliens. And here she's completely recounting in full detail exactly what it was like to be an extraterrestrial, complete with everything that the planet looked like, how she powers her ship with the propulsion mechanism, the different energies that they use, and why they had to come to Earth. So I started, uncovering all that information, and then it gets even crazier. And I'm sorry, I'll let you speak in a
No,
second.
go ahead. This is good.
It gets even crazier. As I'm getting all this stuff from Jen, I'm still very busy in my practice. I'm still seeing clients on a daily basis. And this weird phenomenon started happening in my practice where people who had never met and didn't know that I was, working with this person named Jen were coming and recounting the same lifetimes in Atlantis or Lemuria, or they were recounting being an extraterrestrial. And I thought, this is the strangest coincidence. So I would ask my other friends that do this work as well, are you noticing that a lot of people are recounting these same lifetimes over and over and over again? And they all said no. And then I realized it was because I was supposed to actually write about it.
Well, that's amazing. So, in terms of this hypnosis technique, is it is it just standard hypnosis, only you're petitioning different answers to the subconscious, or is there something unique about this particular type of hypnotherapy?
That's a great question. No, it's definitely unique. It's Dolores Cannon's method, and basically, it took her about 45 years of research to really make this, perfect. It is perfect. It's very easy, but basically, different? What makes this different than other past life regressions is that you're bringing the client to that deep level of trance, which you do in any session, but then the main goal is to access their subconscious. And then through doing that, you can really find out anything they want to learn about themselves. And they can find out like their true purpose and everything like that. And they can heal their body. And that's why it's so popular.
It's like that's the aim of the game when it comes to meditation too. We all want to get to that
Yeah.
level where, we feel at one, or maybe we download some cosmic information, but maybe there's too much conscious mind fighting that just to get to the subconscious. Whereas with hypnosis, that's gone and somebody else is now driving, right? So it
I
seems
think
like it
it's
would be easier to access it through hypnotherapy than, unless you're like a really well-trained meditating savant, right?
I mean, you can access it when you wake up in the morning, when you can still remember your dreams, because that's the deep theta state. And if you try to extend it out every morning when you wake up and you think, oh, I can definitely go back into my dreams. So I'm in the theta state and just allow yourself to feel that oneness in that state, you can get really good that way. It's just easier, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, for sure.
So
So, go ahead, Jay.
no, I was gonna say, so you're working with this this person Jen, and you're realizing you're getting some effective methods out of it. You're getting some good information out of it. Was it the same thing when you were working with other people? Like, did you find it easy to get people to that state, or is it difficult based on the person that you're working on?
That's a great question. It can be more challenging depending on the person's resistance to it. Because some people want to be more in control and aren't really ready to have the session. I mean, it's rare, but sometimes it happens, and they would be considered a little bit more challenging. But really, any can do it. Anybody can get into that state pretty easily. I think it just depends on the person's level of resistance to it, basically. But
Right.
Well,
I
is it?
did find that so many people were easily sharing this information with me
Yeah. How do you
very
find some
easily.
people that are like, oh, I can't be hypnotized? Like I've heard of people that go to Vegas, they go to a show, he hypnotizes a bunch of people, makes them act like a chicken, or a lot worse on stage, and that type of thing. And some people are, very they don't believe and they go under. And there's some people that just don't go under. So is that from the person, or like why do you think that is?
No, I think some people go under and don't believe they were under, more like that.
Okay.
But even Jen told me that she went to a stage hypnotist and they couldn't put her under. So a hypnotist can't make you do anything against your own
Yeah.
will, basically. They can't make you donate $1,000 to somebody or
Yeah.
anything like that.
And she's comfortable with you as her friend, so maybe she was a
Right.
lot less resistant, and it went in smoothly because she trusted what you were going to do. She knew nothing bad would happen, so the guard was down a bit, right?
And I'm sure that's why the universe set it up that way, was they made us friends for 10 years first before I ever approached
Could
her
be,
about
yeah.
the subject, because she was so resistant to any of this stuff. I mean, she was a teacher at the school and she was very scientific. She didn't believe in any of this.
The more we research this phenomenon, the more we find that there's different variations, different things that happen, and we have to explore it. So as it pops up, we're like, oh, well, let's go look at this. And then something else pops up. Well, let's go look at that. So we find it's all over the place, especially in ufology. But what got you interested in the subject of UFOs?
I got into it by accident, honestly. I was never seeking the information. Information has always just come to me. So
Right.
it's really quite interesting because that's how these sessions work also. I don't lead anybody or tell them, okay, go here or go there. This information it's almost as if there are higher consciousness with an agenda and they use me
Right.
basically, because I'm not the one that writes the books. Really, I just edit them. All this information comes through the higher consciousness of my clients, and also what you would call extraterrestrial presences that are coming through my clients with an agenda, because it's stuff that they want the population to understand now.
Do you think this is stored in that individual's mind? Or as you said, if this is information that many thousands of lifetimes wanted to come through, this then has to be stored somewhere else in the quantum level. And we're linking to that and downloading what we need at a time. It's not actually stored within us. Consciousness is outside of us. So what are your thoughts either way on that?
That is correct. It's not just within an individual, because I've noticed that when you bring a person to this level of trance, they're connecting with universal consciousness. So one person could connect into another person. That's why you can heal somebody from your family in that state. I know it gets tricky, but
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, everyone stores this information.
So what's some of the craziest stuff? I mean, without giving away intimate or private details that people will know, but what's some of the craziest stuff people have told you under hypnosis? Like, was somebody a
Oh,
dinosaur? And like my brain only can imagine so much about that because I know a limited amount. But enlighten us, give us some cool stuff.
oh, I thought one of the craziest things was somebody remembering being an ant. They remembered being an ant and they could describe perfectly what it was like with the mandibles. They didn't taste anything, but they knew when it was time to eat, and they felt like a deep curiosity and they had to keep moving. But when they died, they didn't feel any pain or anything like that. They weren't upset. There was still the curiosity. It was really interesting.
It's like
Sometimes these extraterrestrial lifetimes are really interesting
it's
because
like
there's so
consciousness knows there's more coming, so the ant has no fear of dying because he knows he's going to pop up again as something, right?
it was there were absolutely no fear and no emotions around it. Just, oh, I can't wait to see what's next, kind of thing. It was really interesting. It's really fascinating when people remember being an animal, like a bear. I mean, there was one mother bear who missed her cubs and she was after they grew up and they went on with their lives, and she would sit down by the river and think about them and wonder what they're doing. It's
That's
really
crazy.
interesting. It's very fascinating. But the extraterrestrial lifetimes are really fascinating sometimes. I mean, I had one client that remembered just being part of a team that would go from different parts of the universe to look for different planets that would be seedable, basically. And they would take different elements from the planets, like a rock or a liquid or a gas, and they would take it aboard their mothership. And then they would focus with these special tools, they would focus consciousness into it to see if there was a reaction to that liquid, solid, or gas or whatever. And if there was a reaction, then they knew the entire planet could sustain life. It was really interesting.
So
And
the planet had to have some consciousness about itself to be conducive for more life and consciousness.
yes, I thought that was so
That's pretty cool.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this earth, has a consciousness, and that is why it can sustain life, which is really fascinating.
Well, we've viewed cases where, some of these, I would say, pilots or operators of these crafts get out of the crafts and, take some sort of sample from the earth and then, take off, whether it's a plant or soil or whatever, right? Um, and it seems to them that it's very, very important that they talk about the environment. Like, even we were studying the Zimbabwe case, the aerial school one, and they were all spoken to at the same time by this one entity that seemed to be cerebrally way much more advanced than we are, and was able to talk to each one of them individually, not just as a collective, but on their own personal terms. And that sort of intrigues me because it sort of says, can we do that as a species? Because if we're able to receive that from them, there's got to be some way for us to be able to reciprocate that as well. Have you had any sort of clients that have mentioned any telepathy or consciousness with these entities at any point in time?
Oh, definitely. And it does seem to happen like that, especially amongst tribes and tribal people.
Right.
One entity or one group of entities will communicate with all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Or during ceremonies, they'll all receive the same information
Right.
spread out all over. It's really fascinating. But yes, I think that's how the communication is held on many other realms.
Is
Right.
that what happens when people do, like an ayahuasca ceremony or DMT or any type of psychedelic? They claim, I mean, lots of stuff. I've never done psychedelics. They kind of freak me out. I think I tried mushrooms once when I was a kid, nothing happened. And I saw my buddies how their reaction was. And I'm like, yeah, not for me. But I've heard stories of people being like, yeah, I felt like I was a frog for 30 years. And then, or even people smoking salvia and stuff like that. They all seem to have these weird, very tribal, like there were shaman and they felt very like almost like in an Aztec type of scenario, and they were living a different life as a different person or on a different planet. So is that just inducing them to that level, or is that just chemicals playing with your brain on a trip?
Well, I've never done those things either, but I someday maybe I would love to. But I've had other clients that say when they're doing a QHHT session, it's very similar to ayahuasca without feeling sick.
Yeah.
It's I guess it's the same level, but I'm not really sure. I think I'd have to try it just to know.
So it's a way then, the way that you practitioners do this, and there's only 13 of you in the world that have this level 3, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so you're weaving your way, you're learning how to do this. How do you know when you're tapped in to something that is going to give you that information? There's got to be a point where you're like, oh, that's it, that's a sweet spot, right? So how do you develop that as a hypnosis therapist?
You can usually tell because when an individual person, like the ego, whenever somebody leaves this lifetime, they are automatically speaking as a we. So I
Okay.
can tell because if I'm speaking with them and all of a sudden they start saying we or they, when they start to speak as if they are multiple, then I know, oh, okay, here they are,
Right, as a
basically,
collective.
as a collective.
See, the ego is removed, eh?
The
We are
eagles,
all we, but we all think we are
right.
I, and that is a big part of our issues on the planet. But without that ego in your foreconscious and your forefront mind, it is we. We've always been
Right.
we, and we still are we.
It's so true. And when you remove that, you're a we and you start speaking as we.
Yeah.
So it's really
And
fascinating.
with the benefit of all the other people as well, right? You would not
Right.
think anything negative because that affects you and all of us, right? So it just becomes it's a very interesting concept for sure. I definitely want to learn more about this moving forward. Maybe you can give me some materials.
Sure, I will.
We'll post a link on our YouTube video where people can learn more about this, your website,
Oh,
or
awesome.
yeah, I think
Great.
it's worth getting into. It's brain food. If you don't flex that muscle, even though it's not a muscle, but so to speak, if you don't go looking, I mean, we wouldn't be as advanced on the topic of UAP studies and learning about things and quantum physics and quantum mechanics, entanglement. If somebody didn't think about it and not stop at, well, that's crazy. They just kept thinking about it
Mhm.
and collectively thought about it. And we chatted with Jacques Vallée earlier, which is our 100th episode coming up shortly, and he basically said exactly the same thing, right? So yeah, I find that very interesting.
We're getting more and more into like the consciousness aspect of the phenomenon, and that is something that and I mentioned that to Louis before. I was never really a big fan of before when I would read it into books and magazines or watch, documentaries, and it would talk about consciousness. I'd be like, that's just, that's BS. That can't be right. Uh, but when you keep hearing you need to raise your consciousness, need to raise your, I didn't know that my consciousness wasn't as aware or as acute as it's supposed to be, but I guess that's the case, is that some of us are more in tuned to what is going on, or maybe a different aspect of reality that some of us in the West have forgotten about. But when it comes down to hypnotherapy and then bringing people back to, you know, a past life or a traumatic event, like you got to have maybe a few stories of maybe an abduction or two that took place.
Hmm.
Those are more the scary ones, I would assume. That's the ones that people aren't too comfortable going into because they're afraid of
They
what they're going to find out.
they often start out as scary and then end up not so scary when they really get to the bottom of it all.
Right.
But sometimes come in knowing or remembering that they've been abducted, so to speak, and they want to work on that. They want to find out exactly what happened to them in detail. And what's interesting is a lot of times what they find out is that it's really them abducting them because there is no such thing as time. So if you think about time as if you are multidimensional. So you're living a lifetime as a different version of yourself on different planets. Oftentimes, well, especially for certain extraterrestrials, they bred out their emotions. So their future, you could say, version of us, according to my clients. I don't know what other people say, but according to my clients, there are future versions of us that come back to try to work on us so that them in the future will be doing better. So
Right.
that's why they choose us because we are them, basically. And
That's Michael Paul Masters' theory, extra tempestrial, he's named it, where it's really
oh,
just us in the future, either coming back
yeah,
to fix an issue, prevent an issue, or maybe harvest genetic material because we can no longer reproduce. Maybe our planet is not really that good for us wherever we're living, how many years down the road. So that's exactly
well,
his theory.
oh wow, I have to, what's his name again?
Michael Paul Masters. Yeah,
Well, it's
he's an anthropologist, but he's also into ufology, and he kind of has that good mix of the historic archaeological science guy with evolution. And I mean, he proposed that when you picture a gray alien, right? You know, the big head,
uh,
the small chin, and that if you take what we evolved from until now, and then
right,
just fast forward now into the future, our jaws continue to shrink, our
right.
heads become bulbous. Maybe that causes some protrusion of the eyes. We lose our muscle mass because we're not foraging for food and hunting or doing manual labor. Maybe the gravity's different wherever the hell we are in the future. So his theory is that grays could actually be us in the future just coming back. And people have even reported in their abduction events when they're like, "Who are you?" A lot of times the answer is, "We are you."
That happens all the time. And also other races are us in the future, depending on what path is taken. So just like the Mandela effect, where
Yep.
some people remember Mandela dying in prison,
Yep.
other people don't. And so there's many different paths for collectives, soul families to go down. So some people, the future version of them are like Arcturians. So it depends. But from what my clients have said, the gray extraterrestrials lost their planet. So their eyes are a certain way because they've lived for eons in space and basically don't actually have a real body anymore. They use like avatar bodies,
Yeah.
and that's how they're able to come in and out. But there are a lot of, if you think about it, some of these different versions of ourselves are time travelers as well. So there's no, trouble for them to come back into this time space reality because
Right.
that's a very easy thing that they've mastered a long time ago.
Well, we
I've heard it
mentioned,
theorized
yeah,
that there are many levels of intelligence, and some of them are just light beings. They don't take a form. And a lot of
Right,
people have suspected that the reason we mainly see the grays is because it needs to come in a package that our anatomy would recognize. Looks like a mammal, similar to us. We'll pay attention to that. If it
right.
showed up as a plume of fog, we wouldn't know what the hell that is. So, maybe that's intentional so that we do interact because we're so primitive compared to them.
That's what they say. That's what they say, that a lot of them, that they have only a light body on their other planet, but they actually do feel the light body. But that when they're interacting with humans, they'll take a body.
Well, we
basically.
have an aura too, right? People say they can
Right.
see, some people glow more than others. We are magnetic and there is electromagnetic things happening. That's all light is anyway. It's just, excited electrons. So
Right.
interesting.
But if we leave our body, we're in our light body. So it's not something totally
Yeah.
foreign to us.
Yeah. The soul is separate and that's the light
Uh-huh.
body.
Yeah, that was the other aspect of it as well, is that, as we're delving deeper into the phenomena, we realize that, such things as what we were talking about, astral projections, and what was the other one as well? The
Remote
remote
viewing.
viewing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, People are able to do that. Have you had any experience with people that are capable of performing these tasks? Because we keep hearing that the CIA had a secret group that were operating with people that were capable of doing this. This
Yeah.
is
Project Stargate, it was called, with Ingo
Oh, is that what
Swann.
it's
And
called?
yeah, Ingo
Okay.
Swann was a big one. He was able to project and also go to places. And I think there was a time where it was during the Cold War and there was a Russian plane that went down somewhere in Africa and the Russians couldn't find it. And the Americans wanted to get their hands on it to know what the hell kind of technology they might have. And they use remote viewers to kind of roughly give them a close enough idea. And they found the plane. It actually worked. So that's when they
Right.
start spending money on that. Yeah.
I've had clients under hypnosis talk about these different projects and those secret levels of uh, programs. They don't sound very fun, or they
No.
sound like the people are taken against their will.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is that as disclosure comes about, there's accountability, right? Because we got 75 years of what we know of UAP activity, and there's a bunch of people that had their lives wrecked
Right.
because of this secrecy that they're not hiding very well, because we all know about these different
Right.
programs and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Supposed to be like, it's a secret. No, it's not. Everybody knows
Right.
about it, right?
Everybody knows
Like,
about it.
yeah, you mentioned Roswell. Everybody will think of the crash with the three little guys, right? That's just, it's embedded in our psyche.
Right.
But yeah, you hear more and more about this projection of people on crafts, but they can't see their hands, or they're one of the entities as well. So it's crazy, like I said. But I'm personally learning to let go of that. Louis is a lot more into the he likes the CE5 and stuff like that aspect of things, where I've been a lot more reserved on it. What are your thoughts on Dr. Greer and stuff like that doing what they're doing with basically calling people in with their consciousness and all that? Do you think there's a validity to that? I'm still on the fence about it myself.
I'm not really sure. I was just able to participate with a CE5 for the first time, and I thought it was really interesting and great. But I think if you want to communicate with other versions of yourself, or start opening that communication, that it could be very beneficial for you, I would guess, because there's other versions of yourself that are probably also wanting to communicate with you as well, but they can't if your vibration is too low. But what I've been told from countless numbers of clients under hypnosis is that we're being bombarded with this energy on the planet right now. So it's raising people's vibrations. There's not much you really have to do. I mean, Earth is moving in a direction of what people consider the ascension, and people are ascending. Are people going along with that too? We're holding a lot more light frequency, and we're just being bombarded with it basically.
Yeah.
So there's
So
not it's not like, oh my gosh, there's a rush, you better hurry up and figure it out.
So when
It's
you say
happening.
versions of yourself, do you just mean in terms of like other probabilities? Like in one world, Hitler wasn't a dictator, and in another world, he was, or he got killed by a bus. Like, is it just at all those forks and crossroads in life, does time just split off and keep going? And is that what you're referring to when you say
Oh,
different
I was
versions?
I was referring to different extraterrestrial versions of yourself, or what you would consider to be extraterrestrial. But they're not really. I mean, they're just other versions of yourself,
Right.
basically. But that's
So
what we do. I mean, we all do this. We're all part of the same group, of this like ancient group, that goes from planet to planet, and really experiences what that planet has to offer. we live on the planet until it's done its life cycle, because planets have a life cycle, and travel to a different planet. And we're doing this constantly. But I noticed that I had maybe like 5 clients who were postmenopausal come in and say they knew they were pregnant, but they would go to the doctor and the doctor said, "Oh no, that's impossible." And they would do scans and everything like that, and nothing would show up. So they ended up in my office. And each time the higher consciousness would say, "Oh yes, they are pregnant, but they're seeding a different planet because there always has to be a backup planet." So we're right now even seeding another planet. It always keeps going. It's like a figure eight. It's constantly moving. We're always just doing this so we can keep evolving and keep learning.
So it's like a galactic, it's more than galactic universal consciousness that is living life in what it created, like it's experiencing its own creation,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and
But
some of us are more aware of that than others, right? So
right.
Are we just
But
one
I asked,
faction of that? Like, or are there,
but
other like bad guys over there, or different factions in different parts of the universe that have their own totally different story? Like, are we just a tribe amongst many, or are we all really connected? Like,
no, we're all really connected. Because I keep asking that question, are we separate from these other beings? And the answer is always no. We're all part of the same group. And there's no difference between you and an extraterrestrial at all. Nothing. No difference at
so what are
all.
your thoughts on the different types then that people report? Like, they call them species. Some look like praying mantis, some look like grays, some are like Nordic blondes. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of,
lizards.
yeah, whatever,
Right.
right? So
It's
what are
just
your
like
thoughts?
different humans. Like you or an animal and a human. I mean, it's the same consciousness, apparently.
Yeah.
It's just a different points of evolution of because even with Paul Masters in his book, and he describes that all these incidences that took place, and there's always a human representative on board. And that was true of Travis Walton's incident. I mean, there was
Interesting.
a gentleman that took him out, and he saw some other human-looking people, but there was something different with their eyes. Even Calvin Parker talking with him, the main
Oh, it froze.
the main what do you would say, not inspector, a doctor that was performing the procedures on him was female and human, or human looking. And he's now wondering if that was something that basically they put on for us, that they look actually quite different. So did we lose Sarah here?
I think we lost our guest.
Oh,
Oh,
Well,
there
no,
she
she's
is.
back. She's
I was
back.
like, what happened?
We're back.
Oh, it's my internet. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No
it's been a
worries.
little
I missed
glitchy,
what
but
you
it's been
said.
not too bad. So
Okay.
maybe wear a foil hat or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Get better reception. Get
When
the
I
kids to
built this
hold the
studio
antenna.
here with all this, it completely destroyed my Wi-Fi. I have to literally
Really?
hardwire in. My cell phone doesn't work in here anymore. It's like blocked everything. It's so good at soundproofing, nothing gets through.
Yeah, even the
It's so
internet can't
good.
make it.
Yeah, I have no bars on my phone. It's a paperweight down here.
Oh my God. Yeah,
So,
I have to be right by the router. It's like right
oh,
there.
really? That's a pain in the butt for interviews, right? When you're just stuck to one part inside the house. That's
Well, at least I know it usually works best.
Yeah.
that's
But I
good.
missed what you said. I'm sorry.
Well,
You're
basically, it
talking
was,
about Michael Paul Masters, I think, and different
yeah,
instances.
and how different instances. I'm having a hard time with my words today. I'm telling you, where there was humans on board of these crafts.
Oh,
Even Calvin Parker had the examiner being a female, but human looking, and he's now wondering if it was something that was put on mentally, that she actually looked different than what he perceived, that it was put on for him to not freak him out. But there's different, occurrence where people get out of crafts and they look human. So his theory is that yes, they are from the future, and the further you go into the future, the further we don't identify with these entities, like the grays. We don't look at them as us. But obviously there's different things that would affect us in the future: social construct, technologies affecting us,
Environment.
even look at what's going on today. Like today, there's ash all over my car and house. Same with Louis, because
Yeah.
we got forest fires like basically all
Oh,
around us.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest is beautiful, but it's with climate change and all the rest, it rears its ugly head. We had some bad floods this year, and
Yeah.
look at Europe. I mean, it's
Right.
I think it is just to touch on global warming. A lot of people say there's no such thing. This is a natural phenomenon. Well, technically, it's true. Ever since the last ice age, we've been gradually warming, but at a rate that the planet could adapt, not do
Right.
10,000 years damage in 150. That's not good, right? So
Right.
I think it is, but I think this is all happening for a reason. Even if you look at ancient cultures, they all have stories of the world got great, we got greedy, we destroyed it, it reset, and then life was again redone. So this is just part of a cycle somehow.
I'm sure. I mean, it's obvious that it's supposed to get to a point where people start doing something. It
Yeah.
just,
There
seems
has to
that
be an
way.
awakening moment at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like anything, just
Yeah.
like an illness in your body, even
Sure.
too.
Yeah.
Or your
Yeah.
house needs to burn down or something to, get a new house.
So
Adaptive
what are
to
your thoughts
change, right?
on like poltergeist and stuff like that in relation to flesh and blood creatures, or things that go bump in the night? Like, what are your thoughts on that type of phenomena?
Well, I didn't know that I used to see ghosts at all because I used to, in my grandparents' old house, I used to talk to this older woman all the time, and she had a consciousness. And she would talk to me all the time about my mom and tell me really embarrassing stories about her. And I loved her, talked to her about everything. And then I learned later, like many years later, that she had died way before I was born. So to me, I never saw her as a ghost. But I do, think that there are poltergeists or there are different energies that are sometimes kind of stuck in a place.
Yeah.
And I think like even with Atlantis or with Lemuria, there was so much karma and much trauma there. Fields
Oh,
have poltergeists, so to speak, or have a lot of energy kind of trapped there. I think it's different than what you would consider a ghost or what you would consider like a conscious being. Because I think even, well, different parts of us can actually get stuck there. So you can even have a part of you like stuck in a place, or you can even be haunting a house. The
yeah.
craziest thing I ever heard, though, one of the craziest things was I once had a client who had really bad poltergeists. I mean, they were terrible. They would just keep them up all night and they didn't know to say to get out. Well, there was a robber in the area who was stealing everybody's TV and it came into their house, obviously tried to take the TV, but the poltergeist scared them out of the house. So
That's
you
that's a
never
story
know.
he's never going to tell to anybody. Why'd you stop stealing TVs? I don't want to talk about it.
You mentioned Atlantis and Lemuria, and again, we could do a whole episode just on that. But briefly, what are your thoughts on that? What happened? Where is it? What is your brain? What does it think?
Well, I think there are different realities, just like the Mandela effect. So some people remember certain time in Atlantis, and some people don't. I think it spanned, but all those continents for thousands and thousands of years. But Atlantis was founded by an extraterrestrial. According to my clients, this extraterrestrial was a Pleiadian, and he came down to kind of be a part of setting up this grid system for the Earth at that time. But his ship crashed, and that was intentional. They were supposed to have one-way missions, although no one knew that at the time. But this extraterrestrial couldn't get home to his home planet. And so he took whatever technology he could from his ship and he went through one of the ancient transport devices, like Stonehenge, one of those stone circles, and through that ancient transport devices ended up to where you would consider Atlantis to be, in like where there's a big space in the Atlantic Ocean. Basically, it was very large, and he set up Atlantis there and just created human hybrid slaves, basically to create this massive um, civilization, so to speak. Lemuria was different. It was more advanced spiritually. Atlantis was very advanced with their technology because the founder of Atlantis, that extraterrestrial, was able to find and salvage technology that he was able to use. But And Lemuria did not have that technology because that was also founded by an extraterrestrial as well, who didn't have the same type of technology with them, but they advanced spiritually. And Lemuria was a matriarchal society. Basically, the women were the rulers because they contained special knowledge subconsciously that they would pass on from mother to daughter, and they were able to know which plants would kill you and which plants were beneficial, which would heal you, and things like that. So that's basically the difference between the two. But according to my clients that kept coming, what happened to both of those places was that Lemuria had this special type of immunity, and there were a lot of illnesses going on in Atlantis at the time because of all their experiments. Now, Lemuria didn't have this whatsoever, and so the Atlanteans wanted whatever immunity the Lemurians had, but it wasn't something they could give them. And so, after a little bit of fighting, they took a prisoner from Lemuria and they destroyed it with atomic-like devices set in rifts. They created these massive tidal waves and just sunk the entire continent of Lemuria. And I can't tell you how many countless clients I've had that remember this big wave. Like so many clients, they've just always had a fear of the ocean or of these massive tidal waves. And it's from that time for most of them, because so many of us again now, just back again to do things different time that's kind of coming back in our says my connection is unstable, but
You cut in and
coming
out.
back again now, sort of as like a karmic cycle.
Do you think that's another version of the flood story? I mean, a lot of religions have that, pre and antediluvian societies, right? Like there was things were going wrong, there was a flood, whether you believe it was punishment for the world or whatever. There's not only archaeological proof of a big flood, but it exists in so many religious texts and varying beliefs of the same. So, and I guess it would be fitting roughly around the same time frame too, right? So maybe
I mean,
that's
there were so many, there was so much destruction. Like,
Mhm.
I think there were so many resets before.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
flooding. Gosh, there were extraterrestrial wars that kind of affected this planet as well and the inhabitants, and many had to go underground in these tunnel systems. I mean, I think we're pretty lucky right now to be living in this time, even though
Oh
it's very
yeah.
chaotic.
Do you
Oh
think
yeah.
there are things living in tunnels on the earth? Like, is it true that,
Definitely.
yeah, Antarctica and all that stuff, there's underground civilizations, hollow earth theory, that type of thing? What do you think?
Well, I definitely think people live in tunnel systems underneath the ground. A lot of times they're not human, though, in nature, but different races live in these tunnel systems. And then some of the races that go in and out of the dimensional plane, sometimes I'm in the tunnel system. Even like the Lemurians that go in and out of Mount Shasta, Telos, they're ascended and from Lemuria, but they don't always stay in the mountain according to them. They go in and out because they've already ascended. But by them having their presence there, they're helping us, kind of like the 100th monkey effect. They're helping us ascend because that was a small group that's already ascended, but they're planning for this large group, like this big population on Earth to ascend now. So they're helping us by being there.
Do you think that we're changing enough as a species to be able to accommodate more of a, yeah, and I'm not saying universal consciousness, but even a global consciousness would be nice, where we all identify as one. We stop the stupid wars that we got going on. Do you see a shift now in the population? Because it seems like the youth of today have a different take on things. I mean, they're very sensitive to everybody's feelings and emotions, and everybody's welcome, which is great to see because, growing up in the 80s and 90s, I don't know about you guys, but I remember there was so much going on and people did not agree at all. I remember seeing fistfights all the time downtown Chilliwack, and people were different. And now you see a big difference in the culture.
Mhm.
Are we approaching something that's closer to what they want us to be at, like more of a unity, or is it just consciously that's all they care about?
I mean, it totally doesn't look like that, but that's what I've been told that we are. I
Right.
hear this countless times, and I keep asking, are you sure? Are you sure? I don't see it. And they keep saying, yes, we're right on track. This is
Right.
really exciting. Everybody's excited for the progress that humanity has made. But like you said, a lot of it is the new generation,
Yeah.
this new generation. But there are countless volunteers from different planets that are embodied right now that are just waiting to fulfill their mission on this planet. And they're not really used to Earth at all. And they're super sensitive and have a very high vibration. And they don't have to do anything at all. But they're jaded, like, of course, who wouldn't be, being this super sensitive volunteer from a different planet who's never fought before.
Yeah.
So here they are on this planet having to be exposed to such cruelty. It's pretty hard for them. But
Yeah.
yeah, I keep hearing this is right on track.
And we often talk about, there's a threat narrative involved in all of this, but some of the people that we've talked to, they're like, no, there's no threat narrative. Like there's no attacks on us as so far as we can tell. Every time that we've approached them, even speaking with Jacques there, he was mentioning that there's two differences between how UAPs approach crafts, one being civilian, the other one being military. Military seems to be more standoffish, a little bit more personal, and while as civilian crafts, they're just wasn't by seeing what was going on, right? So they act very differently. This
Mm-hmm.
shows us there's a consciousness. The other aspects of it is that these crafts appear to work on consciousness. They, well, let's just face it, when Louis said this before, they move at the speed of thought. So if you're thinking, I'm here and I need to be over there, you travel, and it's fast because it's traveling at the speed of thought. Like that's how these crafts operate, through consciousness. So obviously there is something to consciousness and the technology, like they got to be linked somehow. But I think we don't do that. Like, you mentioned spirituality and technology also goes together with this phenomenon, which is another aspect that's, mind-boggling when you look at it. Do you think that with that, like we've lost what we used to have in Atlantis, which was maybe a little bit more of that spiritual and technologically advanced machinery, like we've lost that connection somehow through the reset?
Well, I mean, you know, from what I learned in about Atlantis, it didn't seem like they, at the time, right before the final destruction, they didn't seem to be very spiritual. Now, that was just the information that kept coming to me through clients.
They were
But
not
Lemuria
spiritual.
was very spiritual.
Okay.
I only got skewed opinions from my clients who remembered this time right before the reset. So there were other times when they were very spiritually advanced but it seemed like they had lost that somehow right before the final destruction. And I know there were groups that were, doing things that were very spiritual. I just received that information from clients.
Right.
But, if you look at the Arcturians, they've advanced with their technology. Future versions of us. Uh-oh, I thought, okay.
Momentarily.
Yeah, they're the future versions of us. We've obviously out on some timeline, as far as using technology, but I think it's really who holds the hand or who's in the technology right now is a little questionable. So I think it's something that we have a lot of help with. That is something that we're being monitored. Definitely, there's a lot of help on the planet right now, for sure, everywhere. I mean, all over. The skies are just crowded right now, I've been told.
Well, let's hope that this closure comes soon enough. Louis, do you have any final questions for our guest today?
No, I just want to say thanks very much to Sarah Breskman Cosme. Where can people find you, follow, learn more about what you're working on?
They can go to my website at theholistichuhypnotist.com. I'm almost on my third book, but you can buy my other two, A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis and A Hypnotist's Journey to the Secrets of the Sphinx, on Amazon. And there's a link to that on my website.
Very good. And we'll put a link to that on this video page as well. So once again, thanks very much for being our guest. It's very enlightening to have these discussions about being enlightened. And maybe that's exactly how we get there, is just by talking about it, absorbing, comparing notes. And we hope all of our viewers enjoyed it as well. So thanks very much again for being on the show.
Thank you very much.